You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where Ollie Pope is now the world's best player of spin and Tom Hartley is the world's best spinner. Yep, England pulled off the miracle to end all miracles. Max and I talked before the show. We think it might be the greatest England win of our lives. And just to top it off, Shamar Joseph ran through the Aussies so that the West Indies drew their away series 1-1, claiming a heroic win at the Gabba. An unbelievable day for Test cricket. And we're here to talk about it. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe Brown. How are you doing, Max?
Hello. I'm catastrophically hungover, but this morning's cricket has probably given me just enough energy to get through the day. What an unbelievable thing we've witnessed. In India and in Australia. Incredible. Can't wait to get into it.
And we've got Dan Weston. Dan, who made some strong predictions that looked very, very well founded on Friday. How are you feeling now, Dan, on Sunday morning?
Well, I'm just glad that Max took 5-0 before me in the predictions competition.
I also took 3-2 England, so I'm looking
I
good.
went 4-0, and India could still win 4 games, obviously.
We're here. We're talking about England v India. We'll try and get to a bit of Australia v West Indies as well, but we'll be doing England v India first. We've probably witnessed 2 of the greatest days in English Test history. Pope's innings on Friday and into this morning will live long in the memory. And then Tom Hartley, who, I mean, quite frankly, we completely panned after the second day. Maybe there was something in that release point stuff. That's all I'm saying. I'm happy. I'm happy to fill out. I'm happy to fill out my Tom Hartley apology form. That's what I'm saying. Before we get into everything, just a reminder that you can vote for the Cricket Podcast and the Sports Podcast Awards. We really appreciate your vote. The voting for that closes very soon. I think it might be the end of the month. So you've got sort of 3 days to do that. There's a link in the show notes. You can also subscribe and follow the Cricket Podcast. And if you want to sign up and support the pod directly, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/the Cricket Pod. Max, I'm going to ask you to summarize the last couple of days. But just because I'm not absolutely sure this is real. Yesterday, I played football and I went up for a header and had quite a bad clash of heads. Like, one of those ones where light was painful to my eyes afterwards.
Well, you shouldn't have carried on playing.
Well, it was the 90th minute, so the game ended. Okay. I am wondering right now whether everything that I've seen is actually some sort of delusional side effect to concussion, and England have lost, and West Indies have lost, and this whole couple of days of cricket is just in my head. Max, can you tell me whether whether I am concussed?
To be honest, Jack, I don't know if I'm a particularly reliable witness given how much I had to drink yesterday. You're probably asking the wrong person. 2 days of cricket. So 2 days is a long time in Test cricket, so it seems. 2 days is how long we thought the game might actually last after England's first effort. And at that point, we were saying England have just picked some blokes to bowl. That's stupid. What is this selection all about? What are they thinking? The team's all wrong. Ollie Pope, is he only there because he's vice captain? Look at what Keaton Jennings did in the Lions. People were saying he should be in the team. And now Ollie Pope is Sachin Tendulkar and Tom Hartley's the second coming of Tony Locke. And my entire world has been turned upside down and I don't know what's happened. It's Ollie Pope obviously is the main story of yesterday. 196 he ended up with, reverse sweeping, reverse lapping over his own head to make his way along, and supported really ably as well by folks Rayan and Tom Hartley. So England's selection policy of picking some spinners who can bat a bit came to fruition as well. So that's another tick for England's selection policy. And we left it with England. They had a lead of probably about 80 to 100, and we were about 100. Where with Pope and folks at the crease, and we were wondering what would they get to. We didn't think much, did we? We thought maybe maybe they could
I
get to
said
200
50.
and they might have a chance. I think, we were thinking, 150, at least they'd make India bat and actually have to chase some runs, but it was looking easier to bat. So, don't hold out much hope. Fast forward, it's a lead of 220, and before you know it, India are 5 down because they've started batting like England when they're spinners. I mean, we it's just prodding the ball to people at short leg and silly point, just getting trapped on their crease and watching the ball hit their pads in front of the stumps, running themselves out. It was everything flipped. Like I said, my world's been turned upside down. And then Tom Hartley being the architect of it all, just incredible. It actually happened, Jack. It actually happened. This is real. What?
Yeah. I mean, it's mad. Dan, you're the analyst on this podcast, and so I think it's probably best to come to you for a little bit of context on this. I think the question is, what we've seen shouldn't have happened. Should it? Question mark.
Okay. So Jack, you talked about your blow on the head from playing football yesterday, and for those who don't know, about a month ago I had open heart surgery, and on day 3 of my recovery, I was given this little button, like a little buzzer thing on the cable, and I was allowed to basically dose myself with fentanyl every 5 minutes.
Oh, you didn't have another Cabs and Run Sing dream, did you?
I was very similar. And the first day I did it. I was like properly overdosed on it. Like you can't press it more than once in 5 minutes. But basically every 5 minutes I was hammering this button, and I had some pretty wild dreams. At one point, my wife was visiting me, and I told her that I was going to the staff New Year's Eve party that night with all the doctors. But I didn't dream anything as wild as this last couple of days of Test cricket in India. That's for sure. Look, I think that it's important. In all seriousness, I think it's important that there's a bit of balance involved in this. So we've got at the moment, and social media, the media in general, is just very, very minded in this way of it's one extreme or the other. There's no middle ground. Now England are called these geniuses for picking players like Hartley and Ollie Pope and people like that. Whereas if Pope had got out, there was I can't remember how many balls he'd faced, but it was very early in his innings. Definitely when he was on single figures, there was a opportunity off Pope. I'm pretty sure, or a shot that he played was extremely lucky to get away with. And those are the fine margins sometimes in which cricket matches are sort of sorted out, and that can potentially affect careers as well. Pope gets 5 in this second innings. He's going to lose by an innings, and Hartley doesn't get the opportunity to bowl. And Hartley's figures are also, I think, somewhat flattered by India's lack of a plan against him. Actually, in this second innings, I just felt that they didn't have a plan. At least England tried to have a plan with the reverse sweeps and play. They stuck to what they thought was a good idea. Whereas, and AB's talked about this a little bit in the chat, the Indian top order batters played defensively. Completely agree. They were almost like a walking wicket because they weren't proactive against a guy who probably would have been pretty nervous. Hartley's record in this match against right-handers was insane. Against left-handers was mainly skewed by Jaiswal in the first innings, was pretty poor. So Stokes kind of got it right a little bit by opening up with Root in at the start of the innings compared to in the first innings, allowing Jaiswal to get a flyer, and just I felt what I'm trying to say is that this because something happened, it doesn't mean that it's a genius move. Because something doesn't happen, it doesn't mean that it's a disastrous move. Basically, and I tweeted about this a couple of weeks ago, a player's performance in a match is dictated by various percentage chances of various outcomes happening. And the better you are, the more positive your expected outcomes distribution is likely to be. I stand by that. There's no extremes. There's a middle ground somewhere. Not that we're going to see it.
I think that's quite well put, Dan. To be honest, and there's some stuff on Pope that I think I've got down here that will talk to that to some extent. But let's go back to yesterday, Max, and probably start with his innings. Obviously, as a Surrey fan, you get to do the eulogy. 196. He's, I wouldn't say flattered to deceive. Since the quote unquote Bazball era begun, he's been quite a competent Test match batter, and he scored a couple of hundreds, maybe 300s, and I think a double in there as well. So he'd been scoring runs, but this is next level, isn't it? I mean, if you're talking away batting performances by England players, just purely based on outcome here, 196 to get his team back in the game, get a first innings or a second innings lead. We're talking like KP in India, a decade and a bit ago, before you see such an influential innings. Right? Tell me what you felt.
Yeah, I mean, it's a defining innings, isn't it? That's the sort of the kind of thing you might describe it as, because, like I said, I think you sort of, I think we've seen glimpses, haven't we, of Ollie Pope, and everyone knows the quality he's got. Everyone's, you've will know from his county championship record and his record for Surrey that he's clearly a very talented cricketer, and he's shown glimpses of that in the England side. But some issues translating that to Test cricket, I suppose, but no bigger issue than him playing spin in India. I think he scored more runs in this innings than his previous 9 innings in India, which is quite something. Obviously, he'll be slipping Akshar Patel a nice 20 to the back pocket after the drop when he was on 110. That was pretty poor bit of fielding, but I mean, that aside, it was an incredible performance, but just because of the context. Not only was it an individual performance, of such high quality, it was in a match situation where England were so gone. They were so down and out. They had a 175 run deficit in the first innings. Like India had never even come close to losing a game after having such a lead in Test cricket. So that the size of that obstacle that England had to overcome is clearly evident. So I mean, you've got the individual side of it, the match situation, and the way he went about it as well. It was like so refreshing from him getting trapped, not knowing what he was doing against spin. He'd clearly decided that he wanted to change that and had a way of going about it. He got the reverse sweep out a lot. He got better and better at it throughout the innings. He barely missed one by the time he was in. It was incredible to see like the risk in playing that shot, and he was just playing switch hit reverse sweeps for fun, as if they were just a cover drive. I mean, that was incredible. By the end, when he was tapping it over his own head, and it was just like, yeah, that's a really smart shot.
The dill scoop.
Yeah, it was like you're looking at this and like, what am I watching? Like this doesn't happen in Test cricket. But I mean, it wasn't, because it looks so crazy, those kinds of shots in those situations. But it's just more about him having a concerted plan, trying to put the bowlers off their rhythm, finding ways to actually score runs and put pressure back on the spinners, rather than just getting trapped and being defensive and prodding at one, guessing where it was. There was a lot more thought about what he was trying to do, much better footwork and thinking about lengths and how he wanted to play. So he's obviously been going away and trying to work at that, like you would do given his previous record. And it was just really, really nice to see that, see the results of those efforts. So quality, love it. It's just hope it's not a one-off. Hope this is the first of many for Ollie Pope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's sort of what you're saying there. I hope it isn't one-off. Maybe it will be. We don't know. I think what's so amazing about it is how out of the blue it was. We're probably rightly taking a couple of pelters. I think they're meant in jest about the predictions we made before the series and what we were saying after day 1 and day 2. I can see on Twitter, Vivek and 10 out of 10, but lost the final, have given us some. About what we said about England, and in the chat, Tim is making the case that maybe we were bang on the money when we were talking about England after the first 2 days. But I kind of stand by, weird as it sounds, a lot of what we said on day 1 and 2. Like it did seem like India were a different level to England in those conditions, and that's why this Pope innings is nuts, because he's flipped the entire script. It wasn't something that you could have foreseen. As you said, you want to know what the bookie under over was? I'll give you both one guess on this before when Pope walks out.
No, I know this, so I won't play.
15 and a half runs. You know, that's not some bloke plucking a number out of the air. That's a modelled number. That's the expectation that he would get.
The even chance is that he scores 15.
Yeah, exactly. So it's bonkers that he's pulled off what he has there. I would throw in, and Dan, you were talking about expected outcomes and how you'd model that in your answer. I would temper. Well, maybe not temper. Temper's the wrong word. It was a brilliant innings, but there's some context to the innings that we should acknowledge. That there was a lot of luck. He was dropped by Aksha. Dan, I think you said there was a chance early in his innings as well. Yeah. He did also play 75 false shots.
There was a lot of chasing of Jadeja, particularly when the ball was turning away sharply, where he just kept going after it, and you're like, no, hold the line, stop doing it. You can see him wrestling internally every time he did it. It was like, why am I doing this? Stop it! No.
Yes. Memory, I think that in red ball cricket, a full shot generates a wicket every 7 or 8 balls. So I don't know.
I thought it was 12, but either way, it's
maths. It's probably
yeah. Like so you know, by rights should normally be out, and India did have the chances to end this, and they would have won the match. That's categorically would have won the match if Aksha had caught the ball when he was on, I think, 110. So there is a slice of luck in there, but to overcome the expectation and to come out with a plan and to execute that plan pretty well, you would say, for a guy who has been roundly panned for his ability to play spin in spinning conditions against the best 3 or the best spin attack in the world, potentially 2 of the best spinners plus Aksha Patel, and to bat so well against Ashwin and Aksha, I think in particular. I mean, Jadeja did bowl a really good spell at him, and I thought was quite unlucky not to get him out. But Aksha Patel didn't look like he knew where to bowl, and he was scoring a runner ball off Ashwin. He took Ashwin to the cleaners. Like it's an incredible feat.
You're not allowed. No one's allowed to do that. You can't do that.
No, it's nuts. It's nuts. It's nuts. And in conditions where clearly spinners are well in the game. Just look what happened. It's unbelievable that we're saying this. Look what happened to India's batters in the last innings. There are a few technical points I wanted to touch on as well. I'd be interested to see if you agree. So we're talking about how he came out with a plan. What I thought was really impressive with him was the way he came down the pitch. As much as the sweeps and the reverse sweep and the innovation helped him to score runs, the fact that he was prepared and able to execute the sort of couple of steps to come down the pitch meant that it was harder than it has been to bowl just on a length and get him out. Yeah. If you look at his interception points, which is always really interesting, I love it when they bring this up for a batter. He was intercepting the ball a lot 3 meters down the wicket, and then quite a lot on the front foot. And then when you look at where he plays back, he's actually really on the crease. If you look at Root is like 6 inches from the stumps when he plays back, but Pope isn't. So Pope's got a bit of a weakness there, you'd probably say, but he's found a way to disturb bowlers so that they can't get him in this area where he clearly has a little bit of indecision and where that weakness against spinners. That's what was my take. I don't know if either of you agree.
That was different to how India played spin in their second innings. Yeah. And actually, you know, people talk about analysis, and maybe a good analyst would have spotted that and communicated that to the players, or the players might not even listen anyway. But maybe that's a kind of a blueprint of how to play in this pitch, on this pitch, in these conditions. And it'd be interesting to see, because obviously if he's found a method that works for him, he's going to carry on doing that. It's not going to be a one-off in this test. It'd be really interesting to see how he gets on in his next 8 innings in India.
I think it's a really interesting point about what you're saying about Ollie Pope. I mean, the other benefit, obviously, of being able to come down the wicket, if you're getting to interception points of around 3 meters, is almost taking LBW out of the game. It's so difficult to give it, and then on DRS, obviously that's the point where it becomes umpire's call anyway. So there's actually a practical element to it as well. And I was thinking back to 2021. I think Ollie Pope actually like his first instinct, I think, when he was playing Ashwin and things weren't going well, was he was trying to come out of his crease and come down the wicket, but he was just randomly running at stuff, like with no actual like plan of when to do it. So I think it's something he obviously feels comfortable with, but he's worked out a bit more when to do it and what the right time to do it is, and which is probably the main difference that we're seeing. But yeah, I think it's a good observation.
Final point looking ahead to the rest of the series. Obviously, he's scored all these runs now, and it looks great. And people will be saying, "Oh, here's the form man." I have a suspicion, if I'm honest, that was right technique for the right pitch. And if we saw a quicker wicket, that might not be something that you can execute because the ball will slide through a little bit quicker, brings stumpings into play. And also, we know this is statistically true that on quicker wickets, sweeps and reverse sweeps are much, much more dangerous. If you've got time to get into position and to make micro corrections on your shots, then you can play them. But as that ball slides through, remember the 2021 tour, that was a big problem for England. Like they were trying to sweep that. It was a massive problem for Australia last year when they played on those slightly quicker wickets. The sweep shot became slightly unviable. So we'll see what happens. I mean, like it wouldn't be a shock if we saw different types of wicket. I think after this
second test, he's the hook.
So yeah, let's see. But amazing batting from Pope. I think that probably brings us to more or less the end of day 2. We'll take a quick break. Maybe chat a little bit about some runs from down the order, Hartley and Rayan, and then get into Hartley's star performance with the ball. Again, words that I just could not imagine myself saying 48 hours ago.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast, where we're talking England v India. England went into their second innings. They were 190 runs. I think I said earlier it was 175. It was 190 runs behind. India never lost. I think it's never lost a home test, but it might have been never lost a test after having a 100-run lead. The test was effectively dead and buried. Even at the beginning of today, to be honest, I thought it was more about England preserving some dignity, trying to get to 150 ahead, and losing by 5 wickets, and then everyone can say good fight, but they didn't. They ploughed on, and we've given Pope a lot of credit. We should also give some credit to Hartley and Rayan Ahmed, shouldn't we, Max?
Yeah. This is where I said like England's selection policy actually, kind of working. They picked Tom Hartley partly because of what he can do with the bat, as well as the fact that he's tall. And he produced some really useful runs in the first innings as well. He got 23 with some good intent, and then 34 in the second innings. Rayan Ahmed, I mean, we know Rayan Ahmed can bat. He's got a first-class 100. I don't know if anybody's mentioned that on comms at any point, but he can obviously bat a bit. So that worked, and they stuck around with Ollie Pope really well. While he continued to rack him up. So I mean, obviously vital to England's win, but yeah, I guess I don't know. It's all part of the plan. Back deep. Yeah, it's still. That's probably the bit that is the least surprising, isn't it? Because we know they can bat a bit, and they did their job. It was good effort.
Yeah, it was. Should we move on to the bowling? I think that's probably time.
Yeah,
isn't it? Dan, on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being the most unexpected thing that's ever happened to you in your life, where does Tom Hartley taking 7 for 60? Or whatever it was it 7? I'll get the actual figures. Let's do him some real credit. Yeah, 7 for 62 rank.
It's up there. It's up there. We're approaching 3 digits. Yeah, wow. I mean, look, I think it's important to make several points. Firstly, I think in the way India approached him was basically without a plan. I think that maybe that was complacence, or I don't know what it was, but they didn't look like they really took the threat that seriously. They didn't have a plan, and then they got bogged down very quickly when they lost wickets, and that was a big problem. I don't have a problem with Akshar Patel coming up to 5. I think that was actually not the worst strategic move in the world. And yeah, I just, you know what, it's probably the most. You can throw Shamar Joseph in the Australia versus West Indies match as well. 2 complete performances out of nowhere. But that doesn't mean. Look, I know that sounds absolutely insane, but it doesn't mean that the release point argument was right. Let's make that judgment after 5 tests. Okay, let's see that in action consistently. Now, if India have got anything about them, they will go and watch this and learn from their experiences. And these players are generally decent players with spin. So why they should be able to counteract the threat of Hartley and the threat that Joe Root posed throughout this match as well. And let's not forget, Joe Root is a kind of, well, particularly as captain, quite a reluctant spinner. So look, it's a one-off. It's one day. Let's see how it pans out over the next month or two. That's what I'm keen to do. With regards to India as well, I mean, look, there wasn't a plan. There was a lot of scrambled thinking. Jadeja's run to Stokes, even though it was probably one of the most exceptional pieces of fielding that I've seen for a long time, looked like he was just desperate to get off strike. And I still don't quite understand the selection of someone like a KS Bharat when you can throw the gloves to KL Rahul and pick Sarfaraz Khan. I mean, what does Sarfaraz Khan have to do to play? I'm not quite sure. I mean, does he have to average 120 in domestic cricket? I mean, it's really quite insane that he doesn't, and it's actually really sad that he doesn't get a chance. KS Bharat's now averaging like low 20s after I think 5 or 6 tests. Hasn't even got 50. And look, there's not really that much evidence in domestic cricket to say that he'd be a great batter in Test cricket anyway. So maybe there's a couple of tune-ups that India could make tactically. I wouldn't get rid of their spin trio. I think that Akshar Patel, while he didn't have the best game, and there'll be calls, I've seen them already for Kuldeep Yadav to play, I'd prefer to see Akshar play. I mean, he got 60-odd runs with the bat as well. And I think that he adds really nice balance to this India team. And yeah, but I do want to see some batting changes, I think.
Yep. Ben Stokes talked a little bit after the game, and I mean, there's a lot of praise for Pope in the interviews, because we're obviously doing this as the interviews are happening. Rohit Sharma said it was exceptional batting, one of the best I've seen by an overseas batsman in India. Pope agreed. Well, didn't agree. He said it was his best.
Yes, best ever.
And Stokes said it was probably the greatest innings played by an English batter in the subcontinent, which is a hell of a claim. He also said,
doesn't it? It does have to be up there.
He said, "I'm a great observer. I've watched how the Indian spinners bowled." And Hartley alluded to this as well in his interview. He said that he'd learned quite a lot in that one test from the pace that Jadeja and Ashwin were bowling and the way they went through their run up and their process. Max, do you think we actually did see an England player properly develop here, or was it maybe right pitch, right time against a confused batting side? Like, how much credit are you giving to Hartley? I think I'm giving him quite a lot. I was very impressed.
I mean, we should give him credit, particularly because how badly the first innings went. Like, you from that point, you can go in 2 directions, can't you? You can double down and really try and show some mettle and come back from it, or you can get Simon Kerrigan. It's tough. So I mean, you have to give an immense amount of credit for coming back from that and showing the steel, whatever. But he bowled really well. Like, he actually he kept it. He managed to control the length. He kept a good line. He caused problems, but it was the consistency, exactly what you want from your left arm spinner. He bowled consistently and didn't throw bad balls in. And I think I got a sense that India. Firstly, I got a sense that India were massively rattled, even when England were only like 50 ahead. The fact that they hadn't just won the game already and they could go home and put their feet up had really pissed them off. Like they were getting ratty. Like Rohit was shouting at people, and I think it got under their skin a little bit. And by the time they actually had to come out and chase some runs to win the game, I think there was definitely an element of being rattled, and I think that may have played a part in the way they batted. I think they possibly, having seen the first innings, just thought, well, we'll just wait for the bad ball and put it away, because that worked really well for them in the first innings. They just waited for Rayan or Tom Hartley to drop short and scored runs, and they thought, well, if we do that, we'll win this at a canter. And bad balls didn't come. They controlled the lengths and made it tricky. And at that point, they, like you said, they sort of didn't really have a plan, and they got caught and doing, I don't know. I mean, some of those wickets were confusing. Like I said, it was like watching England bat against spin, because it was like they didn't really know what they were doing, and they fell into traps, like really obvious traps, like poking forward and just prodding it to silly point and short leg. Like that's basic. It was confusing. So I think you have to say, like, India are architects of their own downfall to a degree, but obviously Tom Hartley, it doesn't happen without him bowling well, and he did bowl very well. I mean, you can't draw conclusions from two data points. Like, he had one bad innings and one good innings. It's entirely possible that he did learn, and that he is putting that into practice, and it worked a miracle. We will learn that over the next 4 tests. We can make a judgment of that at the end of the series, but I like to hear at least that he's doing that and they're thinking about it. And because the Indian spinners are exactly the people to try and look at and learn from, which is what England were trying to do with the high release point thing, isn't it? It was a bit, I don't know, bit edgy, trying to look clever. I think, actually monitoring them and trying to think about what does work. It was really good to hear him say that, and that's what he's trying to do. And hopefully that's, the underlying cause, and it's not just freak occurrence. But certainly bowled a lot better. Very promising to see. But it's still very early days.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not an exaggeration to say that we might have seen the best of Tom Hartley ever, and the worst of Tom Hartley ever in this match. Combined figures of 9 for 190. Which is pretty good, isn't it? That's
it's got an average of 20 now.
21. Yeah. But the truth will be determined over the next 4 tests. I'm sure. We should do the Ben Stokes run out. That was incredible. Jadeja. It was. I mean, like the theme of this podcast, it turns out, is that India didn't really have a plan. 2 from 20 for him. Tied down quite badly, tries to turn the strike over.
I don't actually blame him for taking the run on. I think it was probably there. Like, you can't expect that. That was genuinely insane.
It was a real black swan moment, wasn't it, Dan?
Yeah, I just for me, I look at risk reward a lot, and I don't think that the run provided the reward for the risk that he's taking, even though it was just his most outstanding match turning potentially moment in the field of the whole 5 days, 4 days. Of course, we get golf day tomorrow now because the game was 1 in 4.
It feels like it was 5.
They were delighted when the extra time got called. Look, I don't think I'm not a massive fan of quick singles in these type of environments, especially when you're pressurized. It's just, for me, it seems scrambled thinking, and someone who's, like I said earlier, someone who's desperate to get off strike. I didn't like it at all. Jadeja was, he was one of the last points of resistance for India at this stage. They just lost quick wickets. They were going to have gone from 95 for 3 to 119 for 5, and then he got run out. Shreyas Iyer got out, the same score, 119, and it just created this just monumental collapse. And then I started enjoying the fight back, with which Ashwin led quite intelligently until he kind of had this inexplicable moment. I'm not joking you. I was literally about to tweet, if I was a cricketer, I'd love to beat Ashwin because he's so intelligent and plays.
And then he did that. Oh, so good it didn't happen 2 balls later, eh, Dan?
Yeah, I know. and then Siraj did the old. Why did he do that? Moment at the end as well.
Yeah,
Maybe Siraj is a golfer. You know, I didn't think about it until you mentioned it.
If he is, then he was trying the Happy Gilmore because.
Well, yeah. Hartley. I mean, it's just nuts. I mean, the Stokes run out blew my mind, and I think that's probably the moment when India go from at least 50-50 to this is major danger now.
100%.
And then Shreyas getting out the next ball, virtually the next ball. With the score on the same, with the score the same, just compounded that. So weird. But Tom Hartley, he has to bowl the balls. It was a really good one that got Stricker Barrett. So
really, that was a really good ball. That was the best, though, wasn't it? That was proper good.
I'm sitting in the kitchen watching the game, and my wife's cooking some food, and I literally shouted, "What a ball!"
Yeah, I nearly punched my girlfriend in the head. She was sitting next to me. I was like,
could be some decisions for England to make moving forward. So Root bowled really well in the Test overall, picked up 5 wickets, returned pretty good figures. A little bit, well, he was sort of England's second spinner, if not their main spinner for this match. Jack Leach, who should have been England's spinner, has got a knee hematoma, which I think basically means swelling.
I've had a hematoma before. It's extensive bruising. Yeah, I had one from my thigh all the way down to my ankle, and I had to go and get blood vessels drained in hospital.
Yeah, so that doesn't sound too pleasant. It's quite a quick turnaround to the next Test. So England might have to reshape just quickly, and we'll do a proper show in between the matches. I think we can ink Tom Hartley in, and I think probably they keep Ray and Armand around just for his batting and the wild card effect that the leg spin brings. Dan, would you be shaping up differently? Mark Wood bowled quite well, but wasn't probably too threatening. Anderson in, Robinson. Where are you going?
I stand by the fact that I think that the balance was wrong before the Test started. I don't see Wood as an opening bowler. I mean, he did.
We'd never done it before. We'd never done it before.
He did okay, but I think that again, it's almost like wrong process, good outcome, if that makes sense, in terms of the overall squad balance. I still think you have to go with the India model of 2 pacers and 3 spinners, and I would include Root in those 3 spinners. So I would structure up differently. Maybe Anderson and Robinson in for Wood, and if unfit, Leach seems to make sense to me.
Yeah. So we'll see what England do. Still slightly mind blowing. I mean, that's Stokes. We didn't probably admire the athleticism there, and it's always the same guy as well, isn't it?
Do you think his knee's better?
It does look quite good. Like he does look to be moving.
He looks really fit. He looks really fit.
A little better.
Good on him.
Yeah, they kept saying on comms he's been on a diet. I never really thought of him as a big guy, but
he does look like he's lost weight. He does actually. He does. Yeah, really lean.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe he'll even bowl by the end of the series. Can we have a quick round of predictions? Then we're going to take a break. We've got a few questions, I think. We'll do any other thoughts, and we'll talk a little bit about the West Indies v Australia. Predictions for the rest of the series now that England are 1-0 up. Dan, what do you reckon next 4 tests?
I love being thrown in at the deep end first. Look, I still think that India should be the better team at home by quite some distance. I don't. Whilst I thought that they batted atrociously today, I don't see enough to change my viewpoint on that. I still think. Well, I mean, we can write off a draw completely in any game unless there's a deluge of rain. So, I mean, I think India still win this series pretty comfortably, actually.
Fair enough. Max, are you of the same opinion?
I think I am. I think I'm expecting 4 absolute shit heaps for the next
Yeah,
4 tests, to be honest. They can't risk this happening again and allowing England to score runs. No, I mean, I think this has got to be a one-off. There's so many extremes. How, like, when you were talking about everything is basically a series of percentage chances. So, and we saw the very top end of quite a few things happening for a few of England's players, and they will revert to the mean. And when that happens, India will win. So I can't see England winning the series. I think India 4-1 is still the most likely, but I do now have hope that it might be 3-2.
So you're going to be crushed when England ruled out for 83.
I'm not going to be crushed because I'm still expecting England to lose, but I wouldn't be totally stunned now if England managed to pick up another win. If England had lost this game, I would have been absolutely like devastated after all of that, after Pope's 196, Tom Hartley's bowling, and then if Bumrah and Siraj had taken India over the line, which, to be honest, I would 100% have expected in this game, given everything else that's happened. Like, everything else was completely insane. A Jasprit Bumrah 50 off 20 balls would have seemed perfectly acceptable within the realms of everything else that had happened in this test match. But I probably wouldn't have left the house for a week because it would have been too much.
I think that we will see some more spinning
hijinks
lead pitches. I would say I thought this was a great test wicket.
Really good pitch. Really good.
It was a pitch where you could bat, but the ball was always in the game, and even the big innings we were talking about earlier, 75 false shots in that suggests that there was a bit of luck, and one chance goes to hand there, or one bigger mistake from Pope, and it's a very different game. I thought, an incredible test wicket, and I hope that we see more of that. I suspect that we might not. I also have a theory that with this England team, if we imagine that teams can play in 3 states, this is a bit broad. They can play like good cricket, they can play average cricket, and they can play bad cricket relative to their own ability. I think for England to outplay India, or to win a match in India, you need them to play good cricket and India to play bad cricket for at least 2 of the 4 innings. So if we look through this match, I would say England batted good in the first innings and India bowled good. Then I would say England bowled probably bad and India batted probably averagely. And then for the final 2 innings, I would say England batted good, India bowled bad, and I would say, or at least fielded bad, and I would say that India batted bad and England bowled good. So you had the 2 innings where good v bad matched off. And I think over a 4-test series, the chances of that happening again are actually pretty minimal. What
a lovely way to end this part with that cutting edge analysis. England batting good, India bowling bad.
Well, but what I'm trying to say is that you need extreme deviation. You need one team to be playing the top of their game and one team to be below par. If India just played average every time, I don't think England would have a chance. They actually have to be below their level for England to be in this game.
No, I agree with what you're saying. It's just the words you used I found quite funny.
and you can't even argue that happened in the first 2 innings, right? And India played average and had like 190 first innings lead.
Yeah, maybe. You could definitely say that. Maybe I'm being generous by saying they bowled well. Maybe they were average with their bowling. We're going to take a break, then we're going to come back.
And sorry, guys, before we go to Australia break and stuff, and I'll be interested to hear some views in the chat about this from anyone who's got an opinion. Are we starting to see a lot of evidence that India really struggle under pressure of expectation? We've seen it in white ball knockout tournaments consistently. We saw it recently again at the 50 over World Cup, and perhaps we saw it again here. That's a challenge, right?
I am going to say no. And we have a break, and then I can talk about that a little bit more because I've got quite a long answer, I think, probably. Great. We'll be back in 2 seconds. But before we go, just a reminder to vote for the Cricket Podcast in the Sports Podcast Wars. You can find the link in the show notes. And if you like what we're doing, sign up to be a Patreon, patreon.com/the Cricket Pod. That is up on the screen now if you're watching on YouTube, where you should, of course, be subscribing and following. And is similarly in the show notes if you want the direct link. We'll be back in 2 seconds.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back to the Cricket Podcast. Before we left for the break, Dan was talking about the weight of expectation on India players and how that might drag them down on occasion. We've seen them get knocked out or lose finals in a number of white ball tournaments over the last decade. And, they've also lost 2 World Test Championship finals in that time. So there is something of a body of evidence. I would probably say no, and it's just noise. Like I'm of the opinion when it comes to pressure, and this is based on like quite a lot of studies of this in American sports, where you can isolate certain game moments, and you can isolate when those game moments happen under pressure, and you can see whether players do well or don't do well, and whether there is a pressure effect. And none of them, and there have been multiple studies of this, none of them have ever really shown that there is much of a correlation between pressure and performance. Basically, good players do good things under pressure, which is why we have the impression of someone like Virat Kohli as being clutch in ODIs, for example. Like actually, Virat Kohli is just, the best or second best batter ever to play in ODI cricket. So it's that's what we're seeing. The reason that he looks extremely good under pressure is that. And I suspect when it comes to white ball tournaments, I think there's a lot of we spend a lot of time watching India demolish teams in bilateral comps when other teams are playing some second stringers and India are playing some second stringers. The difference in that scenario is that India's second stringers are much closer to India's first stringers in terms of talent than other teams' second stringers are to the frontline players. When you get to white ball tournaments and everyone is playing their A team, India might still be the best team, but they're really only marginally ahead of second place, and sometimes actually not ahead at all. I mean, I think in recent T20 World Cups, I wouldn't have had India down as a favourite, and I'd have thought if they'd won one of those competitions, I'd have said that they were probably doing it as a mild outside. Obviously, they're not miles off the pace, but I wouldn't have said that I'd expect them to win. And the last World Cup, it's a one-off game where Australia got everything spot on. Travis Head played the innings of his life. That's cricket. And then for the most recent test here, Pope played the innings of his life. He's acknowledged it. Everyone's acknowledged it. Rohit Sharma said that it was. We've been through the luck that played into it and the drop catch moment. And they found themselves with a fairly tricky 4th innings chase without a plan. I don't think it's an expectations thing personally. I think it's all things that could have happened based on the range of probabilities, and we're probably looking for a human narrative to explain that. Is my fairly long-winded take. So sorry, I've taken up some time with that.
No, I love this debate, and on a general basis, I 100% agree with you. I'm not a massive buyer of a clutch player. It's more, as you say, and what we spoke about earlier as well, is that their range of expected performance is just simply higher than the average player. So therefore, they're going to be better in pressurized situations than the average player. So it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. Where I don't know, I'm still leaning towards a different argument for the Indian national team as a collective, just primarily because, I remember the World Cup final, right? India doing okay, then suddenly it all goes wrong, and that ground, huge ground of buzz and noise, goes silent. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. Okay, that's tough to deal with. And I know players and I know coaches, and they're actually very, very quite strong on the impact of crowd on performances, and how a lot of crowd support can have an influence on a team's performance. And I just looked at that game in the World Cup final. I thought, this is a team now who are just, there's just so much. Maybe winning the 10 out of 10 before didn't help with that, but there's a team under so much pressure, and you know that if they lose, they're going to be absolutely just destroyed in the media and on social media and stuff like that. I mean, like, there is an additional layer of pressure, I do think, in India.
I do agree with that, but I think where I would counter there is that for an Indian player to get in the India team, they've had to deal with some level of expectation.
Oh yeah,
all the way. Like it's not something that, you know, it's not like they're gaily enjoying their cricket 24/7 and then they get to the World Cup final and suddenly it dawns upon them that that's quite an important game. Like I think that to get onto the field in the World Cup final, you've had to deal with such,
sure, yeah,
you know, this microscope for your entire life. More players wanting fewer spots relative to the number of players than any other nation. It's been an absolute war to even get onto the field there, and every time you play for India, you've got that microscope to some extent as well, and you've had to play really, really well a number of times to justify your selection in the first place, and each one of those innings will have brought personal pressure. It's obviously a unique dynamic in cricket that India, and maybe to a slightly lesser extent, but I think it's probably still there, Pakistan have this intense national focus on their international cricket team. But I don't know. I think I mean that World Cup final, I think
there are things you can look at that are related to pressure, like that World Cup final. Rohit's decision to open the bowling with Mohammad Shami when he'd been first changed.
Well, this is exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. I was going to say that you can make ill-informed decisions that make your chances of winning less good because you second-guessed yourself. But that also might be because Rohit Sharma isn't a great captain. Like a great captain would probably not have done that. I mean, we laugh at Rohit Sharma in the IPL for using the same bowling combination for the first 10 overs of games, game after game after game, even when they're losing. And it's just like, well, that's just not good captaincy, is it? Like, you're not playing the same team 6 times in a row, so you shouldn't be using the same bowlers in the same order in each one of those games. Like, probably Rohit Sharma panicked because he maybe isn't a great tactician. And when they ordered up a pitch that probably was, you know, a bit tired rather than a fresh deck, they what they do there is they bring an element of variance they didn't need into that match. Whoever won the toss had an advantage that they may otherwise not have had. And you know, is there pressure that affects that level of tactical or strategic decision making? Perhaps, but in the actual execution of the game, bowling v batting with catching and fielding involved, I don't think there's any evidence that anyone's ever been able to present.
I think the likely biggest impact of pressure is going to be on decision making, isn't it? Because that's the mental side of it. So I think if there's anywhere where that might be where you see the pressure impact, that's probably it. That's sort of what I'm saying. I wouldn't on sort of the sort of game, like the actual, you know,
but even then, like
the game aspects, I don't know if it's pressure so much, or like not really being used to being in a position where there's not pressure like externally, but like the other team are on top or making things difficult for you and knowing how to react to that. I think that's where it does struggle.
Even then, though, on the decision making point of view, like I was saying, bad decision makers make bad decisions. We talked about this with Root all the time. We'd be like, oh, he's a bad captain, this, that, and the other. And this was an argument we'd always bring up. Like, you can't expect somebody who is proven to make bad decisions to suddenly make good decisions for any reason. And if you're looking at like why a team might fail and there is a bad decision maker in there, I don't think you can just attribute that to pressure. What we're looking at is actually just a guy who doesn't make good decisions.
I mean, it's not clear cut, is it? It's a contributing factor. It has to be a contributing factor.
So look, there's that. We'll probably, I think, try and do another show on this test because it was good and we'll want lots of thoughts. Well, we'll be obviously we're talking about the second test as well, so we'll stop on this now. And unless anyone has any final words to say, we'll do that, and then we'll talk for 5 or 10 minutes about West Indies v Australia. Dan, you can go first if you've got anything to add.
No,
Nothing from Dan. Max, any final words?
No, let's move on.
I got final words. I thought that was incredible. Like I unironically think that might be England's greatest win of my lifetime.
I was trying to think of ones that rivaled it, and I've got Stokes at Headingley. Maybe the 2-run win as well in 2005 Ashes, but that's probably about. Yeah.
They're 2 incredible games. In terms of being down and out, but I think the fact you throw in away in India and all the history and a decade of nobody being any good there, the 190-run deficit, the guy who can't play spin single-handedly wiping out that deficit, the guy who couldn't bowl spin, like taking 7 for 60. Ben Stokes flying through the air, backhanding the ball onto the stumps to run out Jadeja, who also pulled his hamstring in the process.
Yes, didn't even mention that, did we, when we were talking about the rest of the series?
I hope he's all right. I hope it was just like a little twinge.
I don't want to see it without Jadeja.
Yeah. Anyway, right, West Indies, Max. This was freaking incredible. You were talking about just watching the highlight. Obviously, it was on at the same time as England, so might not have watched it live. Do you want to really briefly explain why it was so incredible and what happened?
Yeah, well, so it was a day-night match, so it was on at exactly the same time. It's a bit weird. We had a game of cricket on in Australia that was on exactly the same schedule as a game in India. So yeah, that was a bit bizarre. And you were fearing for West Indies because they were 4 down fairly quickly. In the face of Australia's fast bowlers, as you might expect, but they came back and managed to put up 311. Then it looked like they had Australia down and out, and they were cruising. And Pat Cummins knocked 64 not out to basically get them back to parity. West Indies sort of dragged themselves to 193 to leave Australia with a chase of 216. And Shamar Joseph happened. Shamar Joseph, with a foot that had been split in half by a Mitchell Starc Yorker the night before, didn't even think he was going to be able to play, had an injection in his foot, and basically told his captain, yeah, if you need me, I can come and win the game, and bowled a 10-over spell and took 7 wickets and was ridiculous. And they won by 8 runs. Like, it's an incredible story. Like, we've spoken about Shamar Joseph already, obviously, because of where he's come from 18 months ago, security guard, now playing Test cricket. And then you have to add to the fact that he was in hospital with a suspected broken foot that literally got mangled by Mitchell Starc. And then he's running in and bowling at 140 kilometers an hour and splitting stumps all over the place. Like, it's probably more mental than Tom Hartley.
Oh, it was bonkers. Did you see Craig Brathwaite's quote after the game? There was one about inspiration.
Yeah. Was it are these muscles big enough for you?
Yeah, so Rodney Hogg, an old Australian batter, had described the West Indies as pathetic and hopeless. And this is what Craig Brathwaite said after the game. Mr. Rodney Hogg said we were pathetic and hopeless. So that was our inspiration. We wanted to show the world we are not pathetic. And I ask him, and in the interview, this is great. He gets his arm out, does the whole gun show. Are these muscles big enough for him? It was fantastic. And you can see how much it meant. The whole team streaking around the outfield after Hazelwood's off pole is knocked out of the ground. Steve Smith stranded on 91, not out. It warmed the heart, Dan, didn't it?
I think this is a bigger achievement than England's one in India, actually, to be honest with you. Just primarily because I think the expectation was so low on West Indies going to Australia and picking up any kind of positive result. I just think that, one, the gap between the two teams on paper, expected performance, however you want to describe it, is so big. And then secondly, it's Australia away. I mean, they're so dominant in their home conditions is just truly incredible. I think today we've seen 2 extraordinary results and 2 extraordinary long format matches, and yeah, just incredible cricket. And One thing I would say though is that you get all the traditionalists on social media, and they're like, "See, it's nothing better than Test cricket. Test is best," and all of this sort of malarkey. But they forget about the times where like the underdog team is like 30 for 4 after 10 overs, and game's done by the first session on day one, and it's just complete.
I mean, to be fair to the traditionalists, West Indies were 30 for 4 on day one. They not only had no expectations, they were really living up to it. Weren't they like 60 for 5 or something like that?
64 for 5, yeah, 64 for 5.
Before De Silva, was it Greaves?
Greaves got out, yeah, and then
Hodge and De Silva,
yeah. Got them up to 213, and then it was a great Test match, this one, because they nearly blew it in the third innings as well, when they had, because they similarly, or in the second innings, sorry, they had Australia really in trouble at 60 for 5 themselves, until Alex Carey scored, quicker than run a ball 80 odd to get Australia back into it, even though he was bowled at one, like clean bowled at one point. The Bale. The Bale span in the groove. It just didn't come out. He was out, but he wasn't out because that's not the rules.
You know what? Travis Head's last.
I disagree. I like
balls faced at the Gabba.
The only reason why I think the rules need changing is because I'm under the impression, I could be wrong, but I'm under the impression that the new kind of light up bales are heavier than previous ones. And so
I think that's true. Yeah, I think that is true. But I also quite like that the bail has to come off for it to be out. And I think a little bit of randomness is not necessarily a bad thing. So that's my take. What Travis Head, Max? What were you about to say?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say Travis Head's last 4 balls he's faced at the Gabba. Wicket.
Wow,
he got a king pair. And
he's had 2 king pairs in a row.
No, God, because I think he got golden duck in the second innings in the Test before, and obviously the last ball he would have faced before that would have been a wicket. So
yes, I get what you mean. Yeah.
But that's sad. Poor old Travis.
Poor Travis. Yeah, right. I think that is everything. Congratulations to West Indies. Congratulations to England. Really looking forward to the next 4 tests now. Like this could shape up to be a really interesting series, or at least a very funny one if we see what we kind of expect to happen over the next 4 matches. Just going to leave you with the tweet from Jim Maxwell as of 3 days ago. Baz Bollocks has moved away from batting to bowling. Absurd selection, unbalanced, inexperienced, but at least England picked a wicketkeeper. I think the joke's on you there, Jim. Ben Stokes will be sleeping pretty well tonight. And Bazball turns out has conquered India.
When next?
Goodbye, everyone. Yeah. See you later, Dan. Thanks for coming on the pod. See you later, Max.
See you,
speak with you later. And goodbye to all the listeners. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow the Cricket Podcast on all of our socials.
Noticeably quieter on the live stream today.
I didn't want to say anything.